Hi, I'm Katie Watson, and I'm going to kick off the conversation on access. As of November 2016, 47% of the world's population had access to and actively used the internet. And while that number is still far lower than is acceptable in a growing digital economy, it's a pretty big jump from the 30% that were connected in 2010 and the 43% that were connected in 2015. This is a sign of the mounting importance of the internet, but it's also a warning sign that the majority of the world's population is still left on the wrong side of the digital divide. According to the same study that determined the percent connected, the disparity between nations is huge. While European nations report an average of 79% connectivity and the Americas report 66% connectivity, Asia only reported 41.6% and Africa 25.1%. And within each of those nations, some populations are disproportionately affected by the digital divide, including women, low-income houses, and minorities. Women and girls in developing areas are 50% less likely than men to have access to the internet. The same report found that in many cultures, it's believed that men are actually entitled to priority access of the web, which can create its own barriers. The largest barrier, however, is a lack of education. Without a basic understanding of written language and technology, it's nearly impossible for women to fully adopt the internet. And in sub-Saharan Africa, women make up more than half the labor force, but these levels of illiteracy and lack of training mean that they're less likely to actually profit from the digital economy, even if they do get online. This has stark implications for their families, their communities, and their nations as a whole, as it prevents a major workforce from generating revenue and investing it in their communities. Similarly, low-income households are often unable to afford technological devices and internet access, and rural areas are less likely to have the infrastructure in place to access the internet at all. This cuts them off from the global marketplace and limits their ability to climb the socioeconomic ladder. The internet is an absolutely crucial part of modern-day life. Those who are connected have the opportunity to make and sell goods, take courses, apply to colleges and receive scholarships, find deals for goods, and exchange information with local and national governments and media organizations. The internet is so important, in fact, that in 2016, the United Nations named it a human right. Access is obviously of critical importance to the billions of people who are currently unconnected, because without it, they can't access educational resources, digital economy platforms, job opportunities, or means to connect with distant friends and relatives. But it should be equally important to everyone else that these individuals get online. It's estimated that if every person on Earth had internet access, it would produce an additional economic output of over $6.7 trillion, which could raise over 500 million people out of poverty. If nothing else, this should convince stakeholders that they need to take immediate action to close the digital divide. Now, there are several key policies in place that seek to tackle this monumental problem, particularly as it pertains to vulnerable populations of women, children, rural areas, and low-income households. And over the course of this presentation, we'll attempt to explain who lacks internet access today, what challenges they face, and what's being done. We thank you in advance for your participation and look forward to engaging with you on this important issue.
Existing policies regarding the digital gap and access issues. We have different sources for policies. The first one here is national policies. Access policies vary from between one nation to another. For example, in the US, we have the FCC's Lifeline program, which offers subsidies to low-income and tribal individuals, which can be used to purchase broadband internet service or mobile phone service. Sadly, the program was cut this week. In many European countries that have implemented open access models, in these cases, the government builds the infrastructure to provide internet service, and individual providers then rent from it, and from them they can provide service without needing to lay the physical wires. However, it's important to note that policies and rules regarding high-speed access have become modeled largely due to the fact that several different levels of governments and entities have asserted the right to regulate at least some aspect of internet access service. This often conflict between local, national and international regulators, which can delay or prevent access programs from being implemented. These policies also have a problem with addressing the underlying cultural problems associated with access, most notably the gender gap. Experts say that the problem related to internet access are the product of socioeconomic differences between men and women, with the usability gap is the product of both socioeconomic differences and underlying gender specific effects. Issues related to the gender digital divide have been very important in terms of discussions in the information society, but very hard to track as many women are afraid to come forward with problems. This lack of statistical data on the subject makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to make the case for the inclusion of gender issues in ICT policies, plans, and strategies for policymakers, particularly those in developing countries. It's important that moving forward, this data is collected and used in policy recommendations. The UN plays a big role here, and the UN Sustainable Development Goal is to achieve universal and affordable access to the internet. At present, the internet has reached over 3 billion users, but the rate of internet access growth is decelerating. The UN understands that the gap carry on between those who has access to the internet's opportunity and those who do not. There is a risk of increased social and economic inequities. The UN has made universal access as a priority, with the understanding that in order to reach this goal, all stakeholders, business, government, and individuals alike must take it a priority. Owing that the lack of access and suppressive tactics by sub-governments, the UN declared that a resolution and declaration in July 2016 that online freedom is a human right and one that must be protected. The UN now condemns internet access disruption as a human rights violation. Its resolution indicate the importance of applying a comprehensive human rights-based approach when providing and expanding access to the internet, and for the internet to be open, accessible, and nurtured. However, the resolution did not receive universal backing, with several countries rejecting the resolution, including Russia, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and India, so 5 countries. The Internet Society actually proposed a policy framework to connect the remaining 53% of those who lack access worldwide in order to make universal and affordable access a reality. All stakeholders must expand their focus and renew their efforts. The Internet Society's solution is to closing the digital divide call on stakeholders to develop human capacity and open up governance structure around the internet to a multi-stakeholder approach. Its policy framework provides recommendations policymakers can use to flexibly create their own internet enabling environment. Drawing on the Internet Society experience around the world, interactions with members and national chapters, and based on evidence from their research, the policy framework shows how to support increased investment, adoption, and use of the internet. The recommendations can be applied to each country's unique solutions.
Hi everyone, Rebecca here. My group and I were discussing about gender and access. We'll talk about access is one of the key things as far as internet usage is concerned. Right now, there are about 4 billion individuals who are not connected to the internet. Why is this? This can be due to one or more of the following reasons. One of them is infrastructure. Infrastructure can be seen at 2 angles when you're talking about rural and urban access. We'll find that in most urban areas they have infrastructure, so they have better access to the internet. And this is because ISPs concentrate more in urban areas because of the large number of people that actually inhabit these places compared to rural areas where they have fewer people. Also, we can look at it from another angle where we have developed and the developing nations. We find that in the developed nations they have better infrastructures than in the developing nations. As a result of this, access can be a challenge. Another key challenge is cost. We'll find that affordability is a key issue when we're talking about access. And this affordability can be seen into two areas. We can talk about affordability of the technology. This is such as the devices, that is the mobile phones, the desktops and the laptops, and we can talk about the cost of access, that is the cost of bandwidth. When talking about the cost of bandwidth, the questions that we need to ask ourselves is that how much is enough when talking about bandwidth. Another key challenge is gender. We find that the internet does not prove to be a safe haven to the users, particularly for women. We'll find that a great number of women are reporting that they're being abused online. This can be through stalking via social media or usage of their pictures without permission. As a result of this, more women are withdrawing from usage of the internet resource. So when we're talking about access, we need to talk about gender as a key element. Another challenge that we're facing is the issue of policies. The policies are not talking about access and adaptability. This is becoming a huge interest in most governments. So we need to be able to have public-private partnerships that can engage the private sector as well as the public sector in enhancing better policies that advocate for the use and access of this good resource. Another challenge is the skills. People might actually have the resource at handy. It might be cheap, it might be affordable, but if they don't have the skills on how to use it and why they need to use it, they won't actually use it. So after providing access to this thing, this resource, we need to also provide trainers who will be able to teach people to become internet literate. Another challenge is adaptability. In most nations, culture can be a hindrance to the use of the internet. So we need to be able to come up with a way that can enable people to adapt to the use of the internet by breaking cultural boundaries that limit them to access, adapt to the usage of the internet. Thank you very much.
Created the free basics, which is basically to allow people in parts of Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East to be able to access the internet for free. This is with regards to some of the websites. Google has also had a great initiative where it has installed free Wi-Fi hotspots in public areas in India and Indonesia. So what this does is that there's many people who can't access the internet, and if they're there, they'll be able to access in these parts, because these are areas where there is a lot of disparities between those who can access and those who cannot. So Google has also done something else. It has created the Project Loop. Project Loop targets rural areas and rough terrain areas. So the Project Loop, what the Project Loop does is that it allows the disconnected to get connected, the disconnected in these areas. So another great initiative is by the Web Foundation. The Web Foundation has proposed policies that will allow affordable and quality and fast access to the internet. So these policies are very brilliant, and it's only fair that we put them in place. So a research recently done by the Open Society Foundation found out that in some areas, you cannot just start speaking about the internet in these areas. There are some basic amenities that are required. So this research was done in South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya. And their findings were that people in these areas, first of all, need electricity. How will they be able to access the internet without electricity? They also need water. They need clean water. And they also need education. So before we start actually thinking of imposing the internet on these people, we have to ask ourselves, do they have the basic amenities to allow them to access the internet? So there's been very many solutions that have been proposed, and we must pay attention to them. Another proposed solutions is to actually implement the policies that have been put in place at a global level, at the international level, at the national level, and also at even the municipal levels. That is the only way the digital divide can come to a close. We hope to discuss all these issues at the IGF. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Esther with Youth at IGF, and I'll be taking you through the action plan that we came up with to decrease the access problem across the globe at the grassroots level. The Youth at IGF program allowed us to learn about the multi-stakeholderism of internet governance, and we wanted to involve everyone in solving digital problems with issues such as fake news, internet shutdowns taking over the globe. We want the citizens of all over the world to participate equally in creating policies to resolve these issues. Through digital grassroots, we want to increase digital citizenship through internet literacy at a grassroots level. Our three products are the Internet Literacy course. The coursework will have 8 digital citizenship principles that we adopted from the Web Forum, which we share in the link below. Furthermore, we have the Digital Native Network. The Digital Natives Network will collaborate with youths all over the world who are working in internet governance. This way, we'll all speak in one voice, share ideas, and create solutions that can work for everyone at a grassroots level. Furthermore, we're going to have internet activism through our website and on-the-ground activism. This internet activism will talk about issues that the youth are facing and the access problem that we are currently facing and working to resolve. By working together with the youth all over the world, Digital Grassroots is solving access problems at a grassroots level while increasing digital citizenship. Our model is to train at least 100 people in the region. We'll be selecting trainers, 10 trainers from different countries who also train other people in their communities. This way, even those who do not have access to the internet will be able to learn about the benefits of the internet, how to use it safely, and how to benefit from it, as well as push for policies that work for them. Through the Internet Governance Forum, we hope to create an engaged network of young people to help their communities access and adopt benefits of the internet. Any young person is welcome to join us as we look forward to incorporate the things we learned in the Youth at IGF 2017 course and at the IGF at a grassroots level. So just click the link in the description below, and we hope to hear from you below. Welcome to Digital Grassroots.